I try to realize that in moments of crisis or in moments of adversity, that all due respect to myself, it's not about me. Mm-hmm. It's about whether or not I'm able to further what I have in my heart and my relationship with love and be able to bring that to other people as best I can.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Just let go. Michael Stich is on the show today, and you are in for a treat. This is one of my favorite humans that we're talking to today. He is one of the most strategic, innovative thinkers I've ever met. And he also has an EQ, emotional intelligence, that's just as high as his IQ, which is up there. He's an MIT grad. He's worked at McKinsey. He's led companies under the WPP umbrella in the advertising world. One of the most decorated advertising marketing careers you will see. And I'm proud to call him a mentor of mine. I've known him for about 10 years. We have worked together in a variety of capacities. We've co-invested. I'm an investor in a new company that he is growing right now called CourtAvenue. And we talk through Michael's formula for problem solving. So you literally will get to hear step by step how he addresses a problem, an opportunity, I guess you would say. I give him a situation and he works it through for us. So you now have that formula, which is pretty exciting. One of the things I appreciate about Michael is that he's worked with huge corporate companies and also fast-growing startups. And he articulates how he approaches situations when it's kind of like you're a speedboat. You're fast-growing, you're agile, things are moving quickly, iterating often, versus kind of a cruise ship scenario, big, huge entities, and how to navigate both. When Michael talks, I take notes, and I encourage you to take note of all of the gems that he shares in today's session. So without further ado, here is Michael Stich. Michael, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I'm so excited to have you on. Yes.
I am so excited to be here. I love your podcast. I love everything you're up to. And it's just wonderful to be a part of this. So thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. In the spirit of Why Not Now, can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now? We'll dissect that day, that minute, that hour, that season, and really talk through how you navigated that delta between idea and action.
I love the question. I love hearing others answer it on this podcast. The natural first response for me is this past November, making the decision to leave what was a very satisfying and very rewarding situation that I had with WPP running the global Dell Technologies business. To jump into a startup with my friends over at CourtAvenue, and to realize that all of the wonderful resources that come from working within a larger organization get stripped away, and jumping right into an environment of scarcity and of entrepreneurialism That's really been, I think, my most recent why not now moment of being willing to go for less in order to achieve some of the things that I wanted to accomplish. Wasn't an easy decision. Was a very considered moment over the course of 2020, but I dove in with both feet. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience ever since.
It's funny because I remember hearing that, you were going to make this shift to CourtAvenue, and I was like, no way. It was such a big deal to get Michael Stich. And when Kenny Tomlin had mentioned, we were just talking about what a big decision that must have been, because that you were set and you've had such a decorated career, but it sent a huge message and signal, especially as an investor, that you believed in this. But what were some of the things that you were willing to go toward, to let go of, this extreme, I imagine, stability and a world that you had been living in for a while with such structure and iconic brand in that? What do you want to do over at CourtAvenue? What is it that pulled you?
Well, thank you. I love thinking about it in that way with you. I'll start with, I learned about my why professionally from the courses of Rockfish. I think most people change their why over the course of their life, depending on what phase of life they're in. My joy, I joined Rockfish in 2010 with lots of enthusiasm about the fact that this thing was a fast growing company. It was a new sort of hybrid agency / accelerator, that I was going to be able to do what I do well with regards to, discovering innovations and helping people figure out how to take value of it. And it was going to be, financially lucrative and intellectually stimulating. And that's what I thought it was going to be great. I learned from Rockfish that my joy came from seeing other people be able to put a down payment on a house. And that I was able to help others pay off their college loans or get a car. And for me, it was like, it's actually, my joy is creating jobs for other people. And I didn't think that that's what it was going to be, but to see people go through, if you will, the natural progression of life that they would want for themselves, all on the basis of a good, developing, professional career. That's what my why is. And I found the benefit, the meaning that gives me is something that I want to just sort of continue to do while I can. Number one. Number two, I was 48. I'm 49 years old right now. And I feel like I've got another good run in me. And, who knows, as you start getting to my age and into the 50s, who knows how long you keep going with your run. Some would say your best years for entrepreneurship are in your 50s. Which might be another good reason for it. But for me, I felt like, my mix of energy and experience is still in a good window to go apply that towards something that can be exponential. And so I figured, why not now? And to go after that with a good burst. But I think what I saw is the ability to create those jobs and to build into the markets that I care about. Cincinnati and of course Austin and San Diego are amazing, but those areas are valuable to me. But also for the roles to be something that we could provide to people that frankly I really care about, and to see them be given the chance to go off and take the next step up and lead and to be able to support them on it. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm loving it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see.
It's fascinating to look at. I just think about infrastructure and how you kind of went from the ultimate just so much to, okay, what are we going to build here? We've got a bunch of Play-Doh. And that can be equally as, like you said, you kind of go into this world of scarcity, but at the same time, opportunity isn't scarce. It's you can do anything. Backtracking for just a second, when you're making this decision, how do you make big decisions like that? Do you get a spreadsheet out? Do you pro and con it? I mean, you are an MIT grad. I mean, or how much of it is gut? Like, how do you get down to a yes or no?
Well, I think, again, things change. I would tell you that for the last 20, 30 years of my life, for my life's biggest decisions, what car I'm going to buy, which house we're going to move into, what job I'm going to take, I do a sum of products decision calculator in an Excel spreadsheet that adds up all the different factors and weighs them into a sum of products model that allows for me then to decide with my head which ones of these options are right for me and why. And then I throw that out and I use my gut and I let my heart tell me, okay, which one is inside of you? And I have a friend in Austin who I graduated with from high school in Hong Kong named Bijoy Goswami, who describes this notion of the undeniable ah. And when there is that one choice in your life that just gives you this undeniable ah inside of you that you can't say no to, then you don't have a choice but to follow it. You can say no to it and it'll still be there. And you'll waste time and whatever energy you have, and eventually you'll go down that path because it's still there. Or you can follow it and get after it and realize that it's not about whether it makes sense or not. You have to go down that path. And so that was what was there. Was I need to go do this now.
The undeniable awe. And so with the first step in going very analytical data, you've got your spreadsheet and models and pivot tables or whatever, and then going and throwing that out and having your gut decide, is the purpose of the first step to make sure that at least you thought it through logically so you can feel good about your gut?
That's it. It is to make sure that I am comprehensive and honest with myself about what do I care about? What do I really care about? And then once I know what I really care about and how much I care about those things relative to each other, then what do these different options do? How well does that deliver on what I care about? That's the intention of that. It's not fun with math, although I enjoyed math very much. It's more around, am I thinking about this comprehensively or not?
Okay. Do you ever get halfway through the spreadsheet and or barely start and you're like, I know the answer, but I'm going to do it anyway? Or do you ever just scrap it?
No, I actually am curious as to how I go bottoms up on it, in which I am suspending hypotheses and allowing for myself to go through to say, what's the right answer for that factor, for that factor, for that factor. Then I add it all up inside of my little sum of products. And what comes out of that is something that sometimes surprises me. But I separate that from what my gut and what my instinct and what my heart says.
Okay.
And I like to compare those two and then reflect on that.
You could sell this template, by the way.
I've given it to friends and they use it. I'm happy to share it out. Just ping me and I'm happy to share it out. It's great for whatever big decision you want.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Are you ready to 10x the way you think and execute? If you're a driven female entrepreneur or corporate leader who is ready to execute your ideas and grow your personal brand while generating more revenue, the Renegade Accelerator is for you. In this 8-week program, I'll teach you everything I've learned over the past 20 plus years in business. You'll soar in the areas of public speaking, personal branding, podcasting, partnerships, book publishing, wealth creation, and so much more. It's equal parts education, collaboration, and accountability. If you want to learn more about how this program can accelerate your career and life, head to renegadeaccelerator.com and sign up to receive emails for more information. Don't miss out on the next open enrollment, so make sure you sign up, because if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? Why not now? Let's talk a little bit about innovation. You've seen a lot in your career. That's your job. Do you feel that there's a formula for innovation that you can really put certain ingredients together and you're going to get it every time?
No. I was fortunate enough to learn at an early age how to think about different innovations and how to characterize them. But even with best practices, people screw stuff up all the time, myself included. I think it's fascinating to have a really good radar around what are all the different sort of new sources of knowledge and capabilities are coming out in the world. I love doing that. I'm very passionate about that. Just because I love being so curious about it, but then understanding what to do with it and how to take advantage of that, I think is a lifelong endeavor and something that is an always on sort of capability that I think is just really fascinating. I love being in the space of trying to make sense of what's next early to help other people think about how to take advantage of it. I just love that. What I will say is I've seen patterns over the decades that innovations come in waves, and those waves are wonderful opportunities for people to get out in front of something that is new and interesting and fun and transformative for their companies and their careers. What I would say, I'll speak in sort of marketing speak for a while. I've seen sort of 4 phases in these waves that have happened in the marketing world. So what am I talking about? In the 1990s, we had the rise of portals, and at the time, what we called application service providers, or ASPs. In the early 2000s, we had the rise of things like CRM and email newsletters and relationship marketing programs. In the mid 2000s to late 2000s, you had Web 2.0 and APIs and the rise of social media, which you might know a thing or two about, along with the rise of mobile, app stores and iPhones and iPads, et cetera. In the early 2010s, you had here comes Amazon eating the world, and the rise of cloud and its ability to move everything into an availability that made all information accessible on any device, and being able to buy online went into every single industry with different phases in different places. And then over the last 5 years, we've been living in this world around journeys and customer experiences and being able to think through how do we create experiences out of platforms out of sort of optimized journeys for different experiences. Anyway, all of those are waves of innovations in the marketing world that I think people have really benefited from. But I'm starting to see patterns for marketers, and for that matter, from their agencies, which has been my world for the last 15 years, to think through how to take on each one of those waves. The first phase of this is, what is this thing and how do I take advantage of it? Or rather, what is this thing and why should I care about it? And it's incumbent upon the marketer to be curious, and it's incumbent upon the agency to know what that is and to demystify that innovation for the marketer. Phase 2 of that is, okay, I know that this thing matters. How do I win? And it's incumbent upon the marketer to energize his or her organization, incumbent upon the agency to develop winning strategies. The next phase is, okay, I know how to win. Now, how do I take this thing in-house? Because I'm spending too much money on you. And then the marketer's job is to figure out an insourcing strategy, and it's the agency's job to help them with that insourcing and to help them with the onboarding while still keeping certain portions of their solution external and valuable. And then the final phase is, how do I diffuse this innovation into my entire organization, such that every part of my organization has a job to be done and a role within it that makes it more normal and just part of my everyday life. And the agency's job is, great, thanks, you've got this, I'm on to the next one. And so that's a recurring set of phases that come in from any given wave of innovation. Right now, we're in front of another wave of innovation, and that's called artificial intelligence and blockchain and 5G. And there's a few of these that are coming on all at once that are going to fundamentally change not only marketing, but organizations. And I see the wave coming. In fact, it's here. And we're in that first phase of, what are these things and why should I care? And it's a wonderful time to be in the world of digital services and digital marketing, because you get a chance to start to begin that sequence all over again.
Oh, what a good way to break it into those 4 phases. You're exactly right. I mean, if I just apply, let's say, social to those phases, I remember going through, and sometimes it takes some companies longer than others, and we get held back at times or whatever. But that was the adoption kind of process. So when you're looking at all external dynamics like a global pandemic or whatever else, do you account for those in the adoption? Like how, you talked about customer journey as well, and we're kind of in, that's been the last 5 years, but do you feel like the psychological impact of the last year is going to have a pretty big dent and impact on innovation?
Yes. And I think a lot of people have talked about how COVID has accelerated the future. I look at it, it's our lifetime's greatest crisis, at least so far. I'm also a big disciple of Pip Coburn and the change function, which means that change doesn't really happen without a good crisis to precede it. And we've all had a nice, good, big crisis to drive change. And people typically don't like change. People like being where they're at because, all due respect, they worked really hard to get where they're at, and they don't want anyone moving their cheese. And all of a sudden, when a big crisis comes along, it forces reevaluation of what I'm doing. And that's exactly what COVID's done. I mean, in addition to many industries being disproportionately affected by the need to accelerate commerce, the need to be able to sort of reevaluate their brand purpose and what do they stand for, the need for them to embrace things like data unification efforts to help with their decision making. There's so many things that are accelerated by COVID, but I think it was underway anyway, and plans were well laid beforehand. But the digitization of organizations has really been accelerated by the fact that these companies have had to make virtual workforces work and virtual customer experiences work and supply chain sophistication increase. And there's a lot of other changes that have had to happen. I look at COVID as just another crisis, just a very big, notable crisis that catalyzes change and accelerates change across organizations.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially in this seat that you're sitting at, and taking that all into account. Changing gears here for a moment.
Yeah.
What do you do when you get overwhelmed?
Let's see. I am a very spiritual guy. And so I pray a lot. I sit in silence a lot. I was born and raised Catholic, raised my family in the Catholic faith. I think all of us are, in and out of touch with our own sort of sense of spirituality at any given time. That's just a daily variance. But I try to realize that I am more overwhelmable when I'm further from my coexistence with God, the best way I can put it. And I am less so, indeed, all but inflappable when I'm closer to my source. I try to realize that in moments of crisis or in moments of adversity, that all due respect to myself, it's not about me. Mm-hmm. It's about whether or not I'm able to further what I have in my heart and my relationship with love, and be able to bring that to other people as best I can. Mm. And if I'm trying the best I can, I live within that, and that's reassuring to me.
Do you ever get, as someone who, your IQ and your EQ, I think this is what's so interesting about you, Michael, is they're both equally as high, and rarely do we get that combo.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
You truly, no BS there. Do you get imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I learned at a really young age, and this comes, I think I'm also a big fan of the value of birth order. I was raised as the baby of my family. So I like to go last. I like to speak last. I like to read a room. I like to understand what someone else feels first, just because it helps me as the youngest to be able to watch what was, at the time, my older sister going first, right? Mm-hmm. My sister Angela, who is still going first in life, and I'm still watching her, and I follow what she does. But I think that also has taught me a skill set of not having to worry about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's that ability to understand what others are doing, what they care about, what their tendencies or preferences are. Really helps me to synthesize and think through, okay, then how can I be successful here? How can I be valuable here? How can I, exist in this situation? So I have that as just from being a child as a natural advantage of being the baby. Honestly, that is helpful. But do I have situations? I think as I get older, I get less worried about, am I going to be successful or not? Am I going, in any given situation? You start to become more comfortable in your own skin as you get older. And you start to worry less about whether or not something's going to work or not, because I think we've all lived through situations that don't work well. And we're still here. And we're able to pick ourselves up and able to try again and allow for certain things to work, even with best laid intentions, other things to fail. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to be in a moment of, whether it be success or failure, to just be and to learn and to grow regardless of the situation. And it's also healthy to take a look at adversity as something that you learn from and as something that you improve by. There's so many of your other guests that have sort of reinforced that point. But I think just allowing for that and to live inside of, I don't want to say suffering, but in this sort of mentality of learning through a difficult situation, that is its own gift. I think as you get older, a matter of attitude and how do you want to take this, and knowing that no matter what, you're going to be better for it.
Oh, I love that. Very interesting. And I had never thought about the birth order point, but that's also a pretty cool observation, and like to think about that conceptually.
I guess I've just seen other people go first for the time, since the time I was a child, and observing them and learning and distilling and frankly doing some mimicry.
Yeah.
To try to understand, well, that actually worked over there. Okay, well, maybe I can try that on as a hat or whatever and see if it works or not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. What's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over?
The balance between when to create something new versus when to follow through with existing. And when do we choose to instigate and stretch and grow into new territories, and or when to continue through and see through and further existing efforts, commitments, endeavors, and that balance between them. Because doing one all the time burns you out. Mm-hmm. It's super fun, super exciting, especially for me. I like to create new more than I like to see through existing. At the same time, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at seeing through what is existing as well. Being a dad and husband and sort of staying into the disciplines and commitments that we make as individuals. But at the same time, I think it's good to have that balance. And so as I keep trying to learn it, what does that balance look like? I'm always my natural propensity is to create new. And how do I make sure that I see through existing more consistently while still continuing to feed that urge to create new all the time?
Do you have criteria on how you evaluate or how you make those decisions? Because I'm guessing you probably do. At least in your head. Maybe you haven't written it down, but yeah.
I'm a maker of lists. And so for me, it's making sure that I've got my priorities in place and listed and in front of me, and that I'm keeping those present so that I'm working against them. It's also my to-do list, right? So to make sure that I've got these tasks that must get done and that they are in a constant state of prioritization to ensure that I've got the first things first as I'm knocking things down. And what I find is when I'm 80 for 20 on my lists, then it's time for me to think about, okay, what else is missing and what else should I be doing and what else is out there and how do I go create again? I never actually finish off any of my lists.
Same. Oh, good. That feels so good to hear you say.
I do try to work down them with some effort before I realize, you know what? I'm not going to get to those.
And if I'm not, and it's not, creating enough of a priority, then it's probably not necessary. Interesting. Okay. I like that. So there's a little bit of, I would say, maybe it's a time, would you say a time quotient in there where how stretched do you feel in the moment? Am I being stretched enough? Do I want, okay. And maybe even curious or passionate, I imagine. That's very, very interesting. So I've been fortunate to kind of quietly not study under you, I guess I would say, but just you've really taken me under your wing and helped me in a lot of different situations.
It's my pleasure to be working with you in any given way, Amy Jo. Seriously, I'm a big fan of yours and all that you've accomplished.
Well, likewise, and thank you. And one of the things that you've really done is invited me in to opportunities, first of all, whether we're co-investing on something, whether it's you're leading the charge. And I'm a big proponent of getting more women a seat on the cap table, not just a seat at the table, as you know.
Me too.
If we were to just brainstorm for 5 minutes, how do we do this more? Obviously, we have the Renegade Accelerator and we're full steam ahead, full court press. But, when we look at the big macro impact, what are some of your thoughts on how we can really 10x the movement and traction we're seeing with more women having that voice at those tables?
So let's break it down into a few areas. Let's break it down into knowledge, connections, and action. So knowledge. How do we increase the awareness and skill set of more women such that they understand how to source investment opportunities, how to structure investment opportunities, and then how to manage investment opportunities? I think, and I don't mean, sort of publicly trading stocks. I'm talking, in our world, venture capital and in startup investing and new venture investing, that sort of thing. What I'm describing is sort of known best practices that exist, and they're not really hidden. They're on the internet. But how do we help with the education and ensure that we commit to driving that education and making that knowledge of those best practices more readily available for people? And for women, so that they can be really strong at that. And when I chose sourcing, structuring, and managing because those were, and I think still are, some of the superpowers that exist amongst the best investors. So if you're really strong at sourcing deals, like that's a superpower. If you're really strong at structuring deals, that's a unique skill set that is really valuable to investment circles. If you're really good at managing, most notably exiting various investments for the sake of return, then that's really a superpower that people want you around for. And so understanding those areas and going deep on one or more of those so that you can be really valuable as an investor, I think is a good one. Let's talk connections. Mm-hmm. So within connections, I would look at that and just say, I look at that as like many other societal changes that we want to make in this world. How do we just improve the connectivity between those that are willing to give women a shot and those women who are raising their hand and saying, I want to go there? And how do we just use what we have in terms of technology, relationships, other ways of sort of helping those just single partnerships coalesce, happen, and activate and spark? I think that might be its own separate program. Matchmaking and finding ways to pair or group various investors and individuals who have an interest in increased female representation on cap tables with women who are knowledgeable and valuable to those investment circles being tied together as well. And then let's talk, sort of activation. I look at activation. We all tend to act based upon our incentives. And so how do we think about incentives being put in place? Social incentives, not necessarily just financial incentives, but societal incentives to help with, once those connections are made, that actually, no, we're going to go make this happen. Like we're going to ensure that there's rewards in some way for ensuring that we've got, that better representation on the cap table and those changes that we want to see made. So I kind of think about it and break it down in that way, and would say we probably can create some programs on each one of those. What do you think?
I love it. Well, I always love to hear how your brain works and how it takes problems and puts it into your own AI and spits out. Yeah, I think, as we've talked about before, even with what I'm doing personally, as well as with my company, we're dabbling in for sure in number one and just naturally starting to do number two in terms of connection. It's happening. And what I think is really fascinating about that is how many women will kind of lean into me. These are decorated careers, really powerful women that will say, you know what, I want to start investing, but I don't know how. And I don't want to be a fool and ask questions that seem, ridiculous, but how do you get involved? How do you start? So kind of demystifying what it even means and what it takes. And then I've been fortunate once you start, and yes, it's been many years, but it really gains momentum in what you see for deal flow and that sourcing. It's like no one's keeping anything from you. They just didn't know you did it or wanted to, right? It's not a boys keeping it from the girls, or no way. Once it became a little more known, it's like, wow. So yeah, I think it's a cultural thing as well. And so I just love getting men involved in this conversation because you have to be. I mean, and if we don't have that bridge and that integration, then there really isn't a solution. So
yeah, and my experience is, growing up in Asia, the more diverse of a group, the better. People might not always agree with each other, but having more opinions that are different from each other makes for a better decision making in the end. And I especially feel that way on cap tables. I have a few companies that I serve on either advisory boards or boards of. And when there is greater female representation, there's greater diversity of thought. And I really appreciate that. I also just really appreciate, I'll just say it, a woman's intuition. And for there to be a really great intuitive direction that women, I think, uniquely have, that men can think things through and structure things, but they'll miss something. That is the right answer that may or may not be obvious, but it's just there. And it comes from women. And I think it's a wonderful voice at the cap table as well.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. Next question for you. I'm just curious, where do you get your news? Sometimes I'll get articles from you and I wonder, do you see this on Twitter? Was it sent to him, or just new podcasts to listen to? And so how do you curate that?
So my mainstays are, the Google News, Wall Street Journal. I tend to not find out as much off of social, although I'm increasingly impressed with various communities that are coming out of things like LinkedIn from a business perspective. I check out local business publications to see what's happening in region, but I also really like some of my, some of the knowledge sources from my prior lives. So I read the MIT Technology Review, and that really keeps me up to speed on what's next out there. I still use good old News 360, even though it's 10 years old, because it's got a really broad base of inputs on different topics that I value. The other thing I try to do is I try to get myself out of these, I don't know what you call them, these closed circles that these news aggregators like to put you in. Mm-hmm. So they think you like certain things and they only feed you the same old crap. And it's really reductive, in my opinion, to assume that the more you like something, the more you're going to like something, the more you're going to click on it, the more we're going to feed that to you, without really managing to the fact that people actually like the spice of life and trying new things and being open to something that's totally orthogonal. So I actually force myself out of those circles and try to go into things that are random that I have no idea about, just to try to understand what's going on. And sorry, I failed to mention one of their, sort of prior life kind of situation is I'm also, again, from Asia, very fascinated on what's happening in the rest of the world. And one thing that Americans do not get, unfortunately, is exposure to what's happening on a global basis. I felt that way when I was a child coming here during the summer times from Asia. If you grew up in Asia, you know what's happening in Africa. If you grew up in Europe, you have a sensibility of what's happening in Australia. Like the news outlets represent global news better in all parts of the world, except in America. In America, we want to throw more American stuff at you. And it's all due respect to Americans, over-indexed on politics, over-indexed on race. It's over-indexed on these things that are our national conversation at the expense of what's going on in the rest of the world. And so I'll get off my soapbox, but I really find like getting myself out of American news and forcing myself into international publications and outlets as being really fascinating to be able to see there's a lot of really interesting things going on out there.
It's a great point. And you really don't realize that until you either A, go travel, or if you've lived abroad. It wouldn't be in your awareness to know that. And therefore to be able to kind of find different solutions. So great point. Okay, so let's bring it back home here. So let's say you're at WPP, your former amazing job, and prior to starting discussions and navigating, exploring this new opportunity, and knowing now what you're about to go in through, if you were to go back and say something to yourself in that moment before this opportunity, presented itself, what would you say?
It's going to be harder than you think. And it's going to be more rewarding than you think. And it's not going to be what you think you're going to do.
Do you think you would have done it still?
I probably would have anyway. I probably would have. But this is by far the smallest company I've ever joined, right? The smallest company I joined before this was Rockfish in 2010 when it had 65 employees. Very thankful for Dan, Kenny, Ashley, Kevin, Ben, the others that had started up CourtAvenue, but I think I was employee number 6 or 7 coming in, and just the level of build out is different at this very, very early stage, and how we all together have to manage everything, and everyone has to do everything, and you have to scale up every last little policy of the organization from scratch, and manage things much, much more tightly than you might expect, even from a 50, 60, 70 person organization. And I'm learning that for the first time. So that's what I mean by harder. It's just, it is much more formative and much more definitional. And I'm enjoying the experience. And that's why it's also more rewarding, because I tend to look at this and say, with any given stage of any given moment of an early stage company, you have to work 24 hours a day, but you get to choose what 24 hours a day you want to work. And when you're doing that, like, it can all feel like it's all just uphill all the time. But when you just take a moment and look back down the hill that you just climbed over the last 30 days or 3 months, you're like, golly, it's just amazing how much gets accomplished in such a short period of time. And it's really reassuring, but you can't look down too long, because you got to look back up and keep going. And I would have said to myself that it was different than what you think it was going to be. I set out to myopically focus on application of machine learning within marketing. And I'm doing that, but I'm doing a lot more than that too. And I'm very thankful to have both the client relationships and new employee additions that we have that really broadens that, such that is one of a few things that we're doing as a part of the CourtAvenue operating network as designed. So I'm spending some of my time on that. I'm spending some of my time on other things that are also useful and valuable. And, I'm able to scratch that itch because it's really fascinating to me. But I also realized that if I had only done that, I wouldn't have been as successful as we have been so far this year. So it's all good.
Well, and it's interesting to think about the levels in which you've played at. And with Rockfish being at that 60, starting, what you said, 2010, 65-ish, before long, you'll be there. And then you do have a bit of a playbook, at least, in your in your bones, even though you'll innovate it and evolve it. But it's probably going to be a nice little threshold to get to when you're just like, okay, I know at least a bit of what the road looks like from here, but I never really knew what it looked like prior to here. So
right. That's exactly right. That's exactly how I feel, Amy Jo. It is learning these things such that I can codify them and share them.
Right. And I've been fortunate to work with and get to know a lot of your team that you're building, and they're incredible. Just absolutely. That was one of your big goals in doing this, is to create jobs and build people and develop people, and you're doing that. So
thank you.
That's exciting. And thank you not only for all of your incredible, support and cheering for me personally, but for the podcast. I know you've been listening for a long time, and just your friendship too. You sent me you called me and left me a voicemail. I remember when Lincoln landed in the NICU. So I'll never forget that. And I really appreciate it. And
we're with you, Amy Jo. We are all with you. Keep going. You're blazing a wonderful set of trails. We don't know what we don't know in terms of where our combined business partnerships are going to go, but they're going all seemingly in the right direction, and there's real impact coming from it. So just keep going. Huge fan.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom.
Pleasure.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?